Hello, welcome to Today in History. My name is Sotonye Afiesi Mapa. So let us roll back the blind to the year 1780. So the day, obviously, as you can see on your screen, is the 2nd of October, and on this day in 1780, this man, British Army officer John André, was executed by the Americans as a spy after conducting secret meetings with American General Benedict Arnold during the American Revolution. So this is British Army officer John André, who was executed on this day in 1780. In the year 1800, so exactly 20 years later, on this day, this man with his intense gaze, his name is Nat Turner. Full name is Nathaniel Turner. Died in 1831. He was a black American slave who led the only effective, sustained slave rebellion. And that rebellion took place in August 1831. Yeah, I did feature him in one of my videos, so go check it out. So he was eventually captured and executed. So again, he led the only effective, sustained slave rebellion in U.S. history. Spreading terror throughout the White South, his actions set off a new wave of oppressive legislation prohibiting the education, movement, and assembly of slaves, and stiffened pro-slavery and anti-abolitionist conviction against ending slavery. He was born on the Virginia plantation of Benjamin Turner, who allowed him to be instructed in reading, writing, and religion. Sold 3 times in his childhood and hired out to John Travis in the 1820s, he became a fiery preacher and leader of African American slaves on Benjamin Turner's plantation and in his Southampton County neighborhood, claiming that he was chosen by God to lead them from bond. So that's Nathaniel Turner, who was born on this day in the year 1800. So he was a brave soul, had his convictions. He knew that slavery was wrong, and he fought for what he believed was right. Okay, 1836, so 36 years later, this was the day that Charles Darwin returned to England. Now, who was Charles Darwin? Sure, most of you hearing me, listening to this, or watching this would have heard of Charles Darwin. He was an English naturalist, geologist, and biologist, best known for his contributions to the science of evolution. His proposition that all species of life have descended over time from common ancestors is now widely accepted and considered a foundational concept in science. So he arrived in England after 5 years on the HMS Beagle, and on this vessel he had gathered the specimens and observations that led to his theory of evolution by natural selection. So that's Charles Darwin, who was born on this day. I don't know what you guys think about the theory of evolution. Drop your comments here. But I've read and listened to a few videos on evolution, and I've obviously come to my own conclusion that if what Charles Darwin was saying, I haven't gone in depth into his own theory of evolution, was that we all came from one common ancestor. Not sure that is right, that we all came from one common ancestor, because I don't think a fish can evolve over millions and millions of years and become a human being. You know, it's about the amphibians coming out from the sea and then coming to land. You know, I've seen the pictures as well. But I do believe in microevolution. You find a dog, you find different kinds or different breeds of dogs, but they're still dogs. They remain dogs. They don't change from dogs to rats, or rats don't change from rats to human beings. You know, they still maintain their kind, but within that kind, within that framework, there's a variety. You know, so that is the evolution that I believe in, not the one that most people have been in my opinion, brainwashed into believing. Okay, anyway, so that's Charles Darwin, just a bit of information about Charles Darwin. Not necessarily going to talk about my opinion, but yeah, my opinion counts as well, because this is my these are my views, this is my channel, so obviously I'm free to air my views as well. And I'm sure that there are countless people out there as well who don't believe in this theory. Okay, 1847, I beg your pardon. So 11 years later, on this day, this man called Paul von Hindenburg, he was born on this day, but the significance of Paul von Hindenburg was he was a guy who brought Hitler to power, reluctantly. It says here, under pressure. I'm going to read this. It says, during his presidency, he played a key role in the Nazi Machtergreifung in January 1933, when, under pressure from advisors, he appointed Adolf Hitler as Chancellor of Germany. The rest, as they say, is history. He was president of Germany. He was an Imperial German Army general during World War I, and later became president of Germany from 1925 until his death. So this was the guy who brought Hitler to the forefront, made Hitler Chancellor of Germany, and obviously we all know what happened after that. Okay, 1869, moving swiftly on. His full name is Mahatma, which is his title, meaning great soul or venerable. So Mahatma Mohandas Gandhi, pictured here. He was an Indian lawyer, anti-colonial nationalist, and a political ethicist who employed non-violent resistance to lead the successful campaign for India's independence from British rule, and in turn inspired movements for civil rights and freedom across the world. So, he was born and raised in a Hindu family in coastal Gujarat, Western India. Gandhi trained in law at the Inner Temple, London, and was called to the bar at the age of 22 in June 1891. After 2 uncertain years in India, where he was unable to start a successful law practice, he moved to South Africa in 1893 to represent an Indian merchant in a lawsuit. He went on to stay for 21 years. It was in South Africa that Gandhi raised a family and first employed non-violent resistance in a campaign for civil rights. So that's Mahatma Gandhi, who on this day in the year 1869 was born. So happy posthumous birthday, Mahatma Gandhi, and for Indians who would be remembering him today, my best wishes to you, or those of his descendants who are also listening to this, wishing him a happy posthumous birthday. Obviously remembering him today. It's not like he can hear us, but yeah, okay. So 1935, on this day, Haile Selassie, Emperor of Ethiopia, ordered mobilization upon learning that Italian forces had crossed the frontier to begin the Italo-Ethiopian War. So eventually this war, Britain came into the war and defeated the Italians. But I'm going to read a bit about this guy. So, upon learning that Italian forces had crossed the frontier to begin the Italo-Ethiopian War, Haile Selassie I was the Emperor of Ethiopia from 1930 to 1974 and had been regent plenipotentiary of Ethiopia from 1916. So the mobilization started on this day when he learned that Italian forces had crossed the frontier to begin the war with his country. Okay, so do apologize if I didn't make that clear at the beginning. So he is a defining figure in modern Ethiopian history. He was a member of the Solomonic dynasty who traced his lineage to Emperor Menelik I. Selassie attempted to modernize the country through a series of political and social reforms, including the introduction of Ethiopia's first written constitution and the abolition of slavery. Now, when you hear abolition of slavery, most people's minds will just go to America. But yes, slavery was being practiced in Africa as well. A lot of the African slaves who were sent on ships to America were captured by Africans as well. So while we frown on slavery, on the white man maltreating the black man, we also had slavery within our continent as well. So it was black against black. So that's why when I see racist comments online from black to white about slavery, I think, you guys go back to your history and find out exactly what happened. It's not a one-sided thing. Slavery is bad. Black to black, white to white, white to black, it is bad. Or black to white, it is bad. It's reprehensible. But there has to be a balance. History has to report what happened in a balanced way. Okay, so slavery is not one-sided. It shouldn't be treated as one-sided. It's bad. It's reprehensible. One person shouldn't oppress another person just because they're more powerful. Okay, so I'll continue with Haile Selassie. So he abolished slavery, like I said. He led a failed effort to defend Ethiopia during the Second Italo-Ethiopian War. Understandably, his country was not as wealthy or as strong, at least at the time, as Italy, and spent the period of Italian occupation in exile in England. He returned to lead Ethiopia in 1941 after the British Empire defeated the Italian occupiers in the East African Campaign. He dissolved the Federation of Ethiopia and Eritrea, which was established by the UN General Assembly in 1950, and integrated Eritrea as a province of Ethiopia while fighting to prevent their independence. Okay, I don't think Ethiopians would have liked that. This is one area where he would have been seen as a tyrant. His internationalist views led to Ethiopia becoming a charter member of the United Nations. In 1963, he presided over the formation of the Organization of African Unity, the precursor of the African Union, and served as its first chairman. He was overthrown in a military coup following the 1973 famine in Ethiopia and died on the 27th of August 1975 at the age of 83. So he lived a long life. So 1935 is our next port of call, and this time is the United States. Pictured here is Robert H. Lawrence. He is an astronaut, the first African American to be selected as an astronaut by any national space program. So the United States Air Force selected Major Robert H. Lawrence Jr. on the 30th of June 1967 as a member of the third group of aerospace research pilots for the MOL program. Let's move on to the year 1937. On this day, this man pictured here, Johnny Cochran, or Johnny Lee Cochran Jr., was born. He is an American lawyer and civil activist, best known for his leadership role in the defense and criminal acquittal of O.J. Simpson for the murder of his ex-wife, Nicole Brown Simpson, and her friend, Ron Goldman. He defended his client with rhymes like, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit." He also represented Sean Combs during his trial on gun and bribery charges, as well as Michael Jackson, Tupac Shakur, Stanley Tookie Williams, Todd Bridges, football player Jim Brown, and Snoop Dogg, amongst many, many others. So that's Johnny Cochran, born on this day in 1937. Let's move on to the year 1949. This lady here, Annie Leibovitz, was born on this day. Annie Leibovitz is a famous American photographer, and I love this picture that she took. I like this one here as well, where it says she teaches photography. It's a masterclass on photography. But this picture of the Queen of the United Kingdom of England, but we know that she's actually the Queen of the United Kingdom and of all the other countries that are still like Canada and Australia. She's head of those countries as well. So this picture is absolutely beautiful. It looks like a painting. There's a play of light and dark, chiaroscuro effect in this painting. So this is one of Leibovitz's pictures, which I find very aesthetically pleasing. Okay, let's move on to the year 1951, and I'll start by telling you his real name. So some of you who know this guy would know that he is also known as something else. His real name is Gordon Matthew Thomas Sumner, obviously better known as Sting. He's a British musician born on this day in 1951. He is an actor as well. He was the principal songwriter, lead singer, and bassist for the new wave rock band, The Police, 1977 to 1984, and launched a solo career in 1985. So, happy birthday, Sting. 1957, on this day, the bridge on the river Kwai, pictured here. This British-American war classic premiered on this day, and it later won the Academy Award for Best Picture. Yeah, that's a film I've seen. I saw this many years ago, probably at least 15 years ago. Interesting movie, so go check it out. The Bridge over River Kwai premiered on this day in 1957. 10 years later, Thurgood Marshall, American lawyer and civil rights activist, was sworn in as an Associate Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, becoming its first African-American member. I've also featured Justice Thurgood Marshall in one of my videos, so go check that out as well. He was born in Baltimore, Maryland. He graduated from the Howard University School of Law in 1933. He established a private legal practice in Baltimore before founding the NAACP, Legal Defense and Educational Fund. Go check out what NAACP stands for. I think it's a national association for don't know what the second A stands for, but it's colored people. So the C and the P stands for colored people. So something to do with African Americans, a body or an organization to fight the cause of African Americans in the United States. Okay, so he served as its executive director. In that position, he argued several cases before the Supreme Court, including Smith versus Allwright, Shelley versus Kramer, and Brown versus Board of Education, the latter of which held that racial segregation in public education is a violation of the Equal Protection Clause. In 1961, President John F. Kennedy appointed Marshall to the United States Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit. 4 years later, President Lyndon B. Johnson appointed Marshall as the United States Solicitor General. In 1967, Johnson successfully nominated Marshall to succeed retiring Associate Justice Tom C. Clark. Marshall retired during the administration of President H.W. Bush and was succeeded by Clarence Thomas. Let's move on to the year 1985. On this day, American actor Rock Hudson died, becoming one of the first Hollywood celebrities known to succumb to AIDS-related complications. The extensive publicity surrounding his death drew attention to the disease. Okay, I guess that's one advantage of things like this, when high-profile people or celebrities succumb to diseases like AIDS, or in our present time, COVID-19. You find out more about the disease. It creates more awareness in people's minds, and they tend to make an extra effort to prevent contracting such diseases or infections. So I think that's the leverage that celebrities have, which should be used effectively. Apparently, he was gay. Yeah. Anyway, and I think at the time, it was seen as, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, it was seen as a gay disease. I was too young to remember the details, but I do remember that I think it spread in the gay community first, before it got into the heterosexual community. Okay, so let's move on to the year 1997. This is an interesting one. This is called the period gene. So on this day in 1997, it was reported in the journal Nature that scientists from 2 institutions in Japan have discovered this human period gene. And what this period gene does is regulates the body's biological clock, or circadian rhythms. Okay, so circadian is another word for clock, I guess. Circadian rhythm, biological clock. So obviously to do with the menstrual cycle of women. Okay, 2005 on this day. So last but not least, this man, August Wilson, Pulitzer Prize winning playwright, who was best known for the cycle of plays, each set in a different decade of the 20th century about Black American life, died. He was only 60. Now I'm going to read a bit about Mr. Wilson. Wilson was born Frederick August Kittle Jr. in a hill district of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, the 4th of 6 children. His father, August Kittle Sr., was a Sudeten German immigrant who was a baker and pastry cook. His mother, Daisy Wilson, was an African-American woman from North Carolina who cleaned homes for a living. Wilson's anecdotal history reports that his maternal grandmother walked from North Carolina to Pennsylvania. Wow, I wonder how far that was. It's definitely not no mean feat. She did that in search of a better life. Wilson's mother raised the children alone until he was 5 in a 2-room apartment above a grocery store at 1727 Bedford Avenue. His father was mostly absent from his childhood. Wilson later wrote under his mother's name, his mother's surname. The economically depressed neighborhood where he was raised was inhabited predominantly by Black Americans and Jewish and Italian immigrants. Life for Wilson and his mother and his other siblings was very tough because they were biracial. He struggled with finding a sense of belonging to a particular culture and didn't feel that he truly fit into African American culture or white culture until later in life. Now, this is what gets me bemused sometimes. So they call the Black Americans African Americans, but the white Americans are called just white Americans, not European Americans. I mean, they came from somewhere as well, didn't they? You know, so it's, I don't know. I'm not saying that African Americans or Black Americans should change the terminology, but you're American and you're American. You know, yeah, one understands that because of their history, the fact that they were oppressed, you know, calling themselves Black Americans, you know, black and proud, they want to stand out, you know, it's part of their fight against injustice. But at the same time, I'm thinking you don't need to change who you are. Yeah, you are black and proud, but it's either you go as an American or the white Americans call themselves European Americans, because everyone else in America came from outside America, apart from the American Indians. Okay, so that's my own argument, you know. Perhaps it's something that should be discussed. My other thought as well is, you know, that feeling, that continuous feeling that you are oppressed. I know that happens, that's still happening in America, but we as Black Americans, African Americans, need to rise above sentiment. We need to be like, while not condoning injustice by the system that seeks to oppress a lot of African Americans, at the same time, don't use that as a label to, what's the word now? It shouldn't be an excuse to be violent towards other races in America, because you feel that you're being oppressed. It's difficult for me to put myself, me not being an African American, it's difficult for me to put myself in the shoes of African Americans, because they've gone through a very, very tough history, very, very, very tough history. And it's very difficult for someone not to lash out against the oppressor, But that's why I keep preaching forgiveness, for those who have wronged you, those who have oppressed you. Just forgive, because this oppression can also come from someone from your own race as well. So if you're saying, oh, let's all come together as blacks, as Africans, you do also have to realize that your own brother, in quote, related or not, can also be your oppressor as well. So try and have a balanced view of what has happened, what has transpired through history. Forgive and move forward. That's my own advice. I haven't finished with this guy, so I'm going to round up shortly. So eventually, Wilson's mother divorced his father. Obviously, he couldn't fit. He didn't feel that he could fit in any of these communities, either the white community, his father being white, or the black community, his mother being black. So anyway, the mother divorced his father and married David Bedford in the 1950s. And the family moved from the Hill District to the then predominantly white working class neighborhood of Hazelwood, where they encountered racial hostility. Surprise, surprise. Bricks were thrown through a window at their new home. They were soon forced out of their house and on to the next home. The Hill District went on to become the setting of numerous plays. So he turned that disadvantage around. He wrote plays, and it became the setting of numerous plays in the famous Pittsburgh cycle. His experiences growing up there with a strong matriarch shaped the way his plays would be written. So this is the man, August Wilson, who died on this day 15 years ago. So he would have been 75 if he was still alive. So on that note, guys, I shall end today's Today in History. This was quite a long one, for good reason as well. Hope that you join me tomorrow for another edition of Today in History. My name again is Sotonye Afiesimama. Don't forget to give me a thumb up if you like this video. Also, consider subscribing by clicking the notification bell so that you receive updates of my video uploads. Like, share, subscribe. Stay safe, guys. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.